This is Moana Roa Reserve Freedom Camp. You're allowed to stay here for 2 nights for free if you have an RV that is certified self-contained. So I'll show you the actual reserve in a moment, but first I'll just show you where it is and how you get there. So it's on the Waikato River, and if I zoom out, you will see that it is sort of halfway between Rotorua and Hamilton, but a little bit closer to the Hamilton side. So if you're travelling between Rotorua and Hamilton, it's a really nice stopover if you'd like to have just 2 nights in a freedom camp. The only thing you do need to be aware of is that this is State Highway 1, so it's a stopover for State Highway 1, and naturally that means there's going to be a lot of road noise because all of those big heavy trucks are coming through here, and so you'll hear those trucks right through the night when you are staying here. There is a right turning bay, so if you're coming from Hamilton, that's not a problem. You can see there's a turning bay just right there. So you can come along here, wait in the turning bay, and wait for this traffic here to clear, and then you can cross in. But it is much easier if you are travelling from the Rotorua direction, because then it's just a nice easy left into there. When you are leaving again in the morning, you may find that the traffic is quite heavy in both directions, and so if you're planning to turn right, do be aware that the traffic may be quite heavy, and there are other hazards as well. Like, for example, if you look here, there's a turning lane to go into this Kentucky road, so if you're turning right into here, you need to look out for traffic coming from Hamilton and coming from the Rotorua direction, and look out for traffic here that's coming out of Kentucky Road and this turn off here. So there's a lot to sort of look out for. It's a lot easier if you stop over on your way to Hamilton, because then it will just be a nice easy left to leave. So you drive into here, it's a little bit narrow driving down here, but it's not too bad. It's enough for 1.5 vehicles, so it's not the narrowest road I've ever seen, but you follow down here and you get to this area. You'll see this nice wide concreted area where people are allowed to park and have their picnics. I didn't realise that you're not allowed to actually park there when you stay the night for your freedom camping. I thought that you were allowed to park your RV there because there were a lot of RVs there when I arrived, but I actually realised the next morning that you aren't allowed to actually park your RV there and sleep. You actually are supposed to be parking your RV on this grass area, so anywhere along here is fine. But I didn't know, and I parked here and then realised the next morning that you're supposed to be parking on the grass. There's no signs, so there's no signs anywhere around here or anywhere around here that tells you that you're supposed to be on the grass. I didn't actually realise until I went to use the bathroom, and there's a tiny little sign on the bathroom saying that you should be parking on the grass. The toilets here were absolutely disgusting. One was completely blocked and just covered in feces. It was really revolting. And the other one was okay, but then when I went back later on, both of them were blocked and just covered in feces, and it was just really, really disgusting. So you do need to be aware of that it's not like some of the freedom camps I've stayed in where it's only campers staying there. This one, you've got every person in New Zealand who's using State Highway 1, and State Highway 1 is the main highway in New Zealand. So you've got hundreds of people coming through and using these toilets, so you need to be aware of that these toilets are used by hundreds of people, not just the people who are enjoying the boat ramp or enjoying camping. So they're for absolutely anybody who's stopping over. And so you get all sorts of just rough people going in there smoking drugs and that type of thing. So yeah, the bathrooms are just pretty gross. The upside of the bathrooms though is there is fresh water and a freshwater tap as well. So I was able to fill up my kettle there using that tap. So that's the upside, is that there is a freshwater tap in the bathrooms that are available for you to use to fill up your kettle, so that you can then boil a cup of tea and use that boiled water for your brushing your teeth and so on. And the last thing I would say about Moana Roa Reserve Freedom Camp is that in winter and spring it gets really muddy. You can see there's some really tall trees there, and so the sun can't dry out that grassy area, so when it gets muddy there's all sorts of mud puddles, and that's where you're expected to park. You're not supposed to actually park on here, so just be aware of that, that like all of New Zealand it's just muddy in spring, so you need to be aware of that. If it's too muddy for you to park, you may need to just move on and find somewhere else. You should always have a backup plan anyway, anytime you stay in these freedom camps, because there's always problems, you know, toilets not working and whatnot. The other thing you just need to be aware of is that the internet is not very fast. You can watch YouTube videos, but if you're trying to have work meetings, you may find that it's a little bit slow, especially if you've got webcams on. You're going to find that the internet's probably a bit slow and lagging. And so the slow internet, it's obviously going to be slow in this region, because if you look at it on a map, you'll see that it's really quite far from the main city centres. So understandably it's not going to have the fastest internet. I tried to take a speed test, but it couldn't even get a speed test. I did a speed test later on at this other freedom camp, and the internet was really awful. It came back as very slow when I stayed here, so just be aware of that, that internet is generally pretty slow out here because it is not near the city centres. So that's the wireless internet that I'm talking about there. But otherwise a really nice freedom camp. It's great that the council's provided this place for people to stay for 2 nights. It's just, you know, you do need to be aware that the toilets are not cleaned very often, so they do end up pretty mucky and disgusting. And the other thing you just need to be aware of course, is that there's lots of homeless guys living in these parks. Any freedom camp in New Zealand where there's flushing toilets, you're going to have homeless guys living in the parks. So you'll see a lot of these homeless guys and, you know, living in their station wagons and so on. So there were 2 of them, or more than that, there were 2 regulars that were there both nights, and then there were other homeless people that came and went as well. So even though it's supposed to be certified self-contained, there are a lot of homeless people in this area and living in these freedom camps, but that's just the whole of New Zealand. Every freedom camp I've ever stayed in New Zealand has homeless people in it, and these homeless people were well behaved and quiet, so that was good. But yeah, really worth visiting and staying at this freedom camp. Happy camping. Bye.